he feels it's. Just so messy.
Okay, it's 8:30. We'll come to order. First item is adjustment to or approval of the agenda.
I'm going to move
that we add to the agenda a bid opening for the entrance improvement project. Place that item right after public comment.
Okay, so your motion is to adopt the agenda with that condition.
Hang on, Paul. Part of my motion also is to remove the executive session.
Okay.
The problem, wait a minute, the problem is he's trying to find out whether or not we're gonna have to remove item 9.
We can remove it when we get there. So am I correct to assume that we have a
Here's the motion, Paul. Move to add to the agenda a bid opening for the entrance improvement project and place the item after public comment to remove the executive session at the end of the meeting, approve the agenda as amended.
Second motion.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Public comment. Anyone here to speak to public comment or? Seeing none, we'll move on to the bid opening. So here. That's something I should open or you want to open that? And this is a bid opening for the courthouse steps. Looks like we have one submission from Gardner Concrete from Bangor, Maine. Get it open. Oh, it's bring a chainsaw next time. Should I be reading the amount here?
It's our policies to open them and read aloud.
Okay, so again, it's from Gardner Concrete, Bangor, Maine, for the sum of $87,750.
87,000 what?
$87,750. Looks like everything's in order here. Give that to Michael.
No, give it to Dennis and Dennis will review it.
Yeah.
You'll be back sometime today, you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna share with Steve some other things.
Okay, so you might not be back today.
And if you,
If
if
you
we
can,
have a recommendation, we'll give it to you
bring it back.
today.
Okay, so we're just gonna move on.
Okay. Next up is the meeting minutes. We have the January 18th special meeting minutes before us.
Move to approve the minutes of January 18th, 2023 Commissioner Special Meeting as presented.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That was an aye. Aye. Okay, so unanimous. Next up is employee recognitions. First up is Michelle Cody, Administrative Assistant for 25 years.
She's right downstairs. Yeah, she should be right back. She just had to run downstairs.
Okay, so how about we reverse those and we'll surprise her when she gets back. Next up is Eric Fitch, RCC 911 dispatcher for 20 years.
He wasn't able to make it this one.
Okay, do you want to,
So we can.
do you want to add anything? or-
Take it to.
Say a few words, Bob.
Sure.
I'm not forcing
I can
it.
help with that.
Okay.
What can you say?
Yeah, that's well.
Yeah.
Bob, you take Eric's.
Yeah, well, motion to recognize. In order.
Oh, you want to do that too?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to move to recognize Eric Pitch's 20 years of employment and to thank him for his service.
Seconded.
Discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And next up, as she walks in, is Michelle Cody, Administrative Assistant for 25 years.
I'm going to move to recognize Michelle Cody's 25 years of employment and to thank her for her service.
Seconded.
Thank you.
So this is somebody who worked for me, 17 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
You get to hug it. Handshake.
Just luck you don't hurt me, Bill.
So,
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Next up is Mission Broadband Update. Michael, JT, I assume?
John wasn't gonna be available the last thing I knew.
Okay,
He's out of town. He will come before you next meeting to discuss that, but he did want to make sure he submitted his report.
I'm going to move to accept and file a mission broadband update as presented.
Seconded.
any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye. So we have reference material though, Michael, from,
Yeah, that's,
So
do we want to? Okay, we're going to deal with that.
we can do this now or however you want to proceed.
I think it would be good to have an overview now.
So essentially, Monica, myself, and Kitty went through previous actions of the commission, made sure that we hopefully hit every single type of discussion that had occurred and what had been authorized and set aside. And then Monica went about the task of trying to consolidate this all into a kind of easy, hopefully easily digestible budget that whenever the commissioners have questions, but more importantly too, when the public asks us, we can pull it out and give it to them and say, kind of here's the status of where the APRA funds have been spent. And obviously in the last few weeks, we've received a few more requests about that as well, so it does help. You'll see basically that we provided a list of the projects, the funding status, so whether or not it was funded, if it's open, obviously, it's still hasn't been completed or maybe hasn't been undertaken, but you've specifically set aside those funds anyway for that purpose. And obviously complete means it's been done. And then basically continuing to the right, it gives the total amount that's funded, the expenditures over the last 2 years, as well as the beginning of this year, the total amount, the unexpended balance for that project, the TRIO code, which is the budget code for budgetary purposes, and then what the balance is showing in TRIO. So if she pulled up one of the normal TRIO budget reports for these accounts, that would correspond with what you'd see in TRIO right now. Going down through, there were a couple items that we recommended for discussion. One being, and of course, just kind of had the bid, but the commission had voted at one time to do the sheriff's entrance project. The bids came in, as I understand, it's kind of before my time, but, and then that was set aside, and obviously now today, we just kind of have a revised proposal for you. Obviously, the bids weren't open, so we didn't know what that was gonna be. So, at some point, the presumption is if you decide to go with that you authorize those funds from ARPA and you would plug it into that. And then the remaining funds would then become available to the overall remaining balance of what you have there before you. The other major project is the discussion about broadband, and this really is the one that JD wants to come back and talk with you at the next meeting because he had another commitment today. But that's where he wants to go with that proposal that maybe trying to fill in the remaining gaps throughout the county. And I won't steal his thunder on that. I'll let him kind of present it to you, but he probably will have additional information before the next meeting for you as well. But you can see with that, I think it was like 5.3 or so. You originally set aside about half to go towards broadband projects. You have a list there of the ones that were actually funded and the status of all of them. The most recent one is the town of Orland. But looking at all those expenditures right there, that still leaves about almost $4.9 million left. So there really, and presumably this will occur at the next meeting, there needs to be a discussion presumably about where we are. And Monica provided kind of a copy, we call it the orange sheet, this is kind of yellow and green now, but that gives you kind of an outline of where Mission Broadband had reached out to other communities, where they are or where they were in their program. And you'll see on that list that there are communities throughout the county that indicated and haven't changed their opinion that they're not going to do anything with it, or they're pursuing it in other meetings. So it really does come back to what Mission Broadband realistically thinks they might be able to propose to you and get approved and have it be funded. Obviously, at this point in time, the question is, do you continue to set aside all those funds, or do you decide to pull back a little bit on some of those funds and maybe allocate them somewhere else where you know they'll get spent, rather than waiting until the very end and find out you can't do that. But again, I won't steal his thunder. He'll come in next meeting and talk.
Yeah, quick question. So we got this listed for the Orland. You haven't had anything presented to us or approved anything for us.
No, and then we just set it in there right now as a placeholder for you.
Yeah.
There is a proposal that's being worked on right now that I'm assuming he will also bring to the next meeting. And that's why it basically says project planning rather than funded, because you haven't approved it at this point.
Well, I'd like to take this under advisement, gentlemen, today and come back and have a in-depth discussion about budget. In other words, setting aside categories for different projects. Right now, we have broadband included with other non-broadband projects in this calculation, correct, Michael?
Yes,
5.3 is with a balance of 4.89 is also includes everything from RCC chairs to has to pay, right?
yes.
Yeah, okay. So basically, I'd like to just accept the report as presented and then schedule another agenda item, sit down and categorize where we're going to spend this, where we at least categorize for the full $10.3 million.
Or as best we can.
Well, I mean, all we can do is, yeah, in other words, figure out where do we want to spend it generally, come up with categories. And so it could be public safety as a category, it could be, housing, I don't care. Anyways, and come up and plug in a number, which isn't cast in concrete, but it just gives us some sense of where some of this money would be going and what would, and then develop that budget for this.
The total balance in ARPA funds, that's the 6.4 almost, right?
I'll just give them that.
Yeah, that's not obligated.
Not obligated,
Gotcha.
yeah. And then, there's some that's obligated, but needs to be,
Needs to be expended or finished.
yeah. Or adjusted.
How much has actually been expended?
So the actual extension is,
2.1 million.
yeah.
Where do
Under
we,
total, so like the first gray box down at the bottom where it talks about total expenditures,
Yeah,
it's like the fourth line over
yeah,
which
it's a shade.
report we're looking at?
the budget itself. So like the
Total
fourth column on the left,
expenditures.
total
I got you.
Right.
Total expenditures, I got you.
That's what
2.1.
we've checked.
That's the one, that, yeah, that's actually.
So we've got 8.5 left, something like that. Is that correct? 8.4.
Hasn't been actually spent yet. Doesn't mean you haven't already obligated it.
That's right.
But-
When you say obligated, in other words, we hit,
Well, you voted basically to say we want to purchase.
we penciled
this.
it in somewhere.
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah,
yeah.
purchase this, do this, whatever.
And that's really all I'd like to do in developing a budget is just to pencil in under certain categories where we think we're,
A big chunk of that is the 4.8 million that was obligated to broadband.
Right.
we say obligated, I don't like that word. It's penciled in. In other words, we penciled in, we said, let's talk about 5 million and see how far that goes.
That's
That's
right.
all we did.
That's right.
Well,
So in other words, yeah, And so we, in the category, we have 5.3 million for broadband, but that doesn't mean we can't take $1 million of that, pull it into another category at some point.
That's right.
Right.
And
Yeah, we
also
just,
that-
like, from a budgetary, we're using allocated versus obligated. It's a fine line, but
Yeah,
if you got a different word you want us to use, so it makes
Yeah.
sense to everybody, that's fine.
We all know what you mean, it's just
Yeah.
that obligated to me, it sounds a little too firm.
Well, I wish that John was here to talk today, because that's a big part of that broadband discussion. It's his
yeah,
discussion.
yeah, we really need to see where he is.
But you were very much correct, Commissioner, in that, yeah, these funds you set aside, but that's basically all you did.
So I'm gonna move to accept and file the APA spending overview report as presented and table any action on adopting it until a future meeting.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so really, that discussion on the budget as a whole needs to happen after we hear from John.
Yeah, I would assume.
Yeah.
Well, that's a piece of it.
Yes. But without that number,
Well, I don't think that's gonna change, that may not change our budget for now. I mean, we may leave that 5.3 in there for the budgeted amount for whether or not we want to stick to it, depends on a lot of discussions, John, over the next year.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, yeah. I think at this meeting, gentlemen, though, you need to think about what other projects, whether it's housing, whether it's more heating fuel, whatever, and where would that plug into a category? All right, so, I mean, if we want to spend more on the jail, is that public safety and so on? So that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. So that's what I was gonna say, is that basically we gave you a list of different projects that have been mentioned or brought up in some capacity. Those are by no means necessarily ready for prime time to be actually applied somewhere. But if they are items that you want us to pursue, then we can go back and maybe get you more concrete proposals to actually present to the commission to act on. But at least it gives you an over idea, kind of where people have mentioned needs, I guess.
yeah, so, there's been needs mentioned in the area of housing. Two proposals, there's been some infrastructure mentions, although nothing followed through, as I understand. So, I guess those are the types of topics that Michael is suggesting and your suggesting.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Now, we have other requests that were asked to consider from APA funds.
Not really formal proposals, just sort of discussions at this point.
Well, I'm looking at 3,
It's here.
and Monica's here, and Monica's asking for 20,000 from APA for some Trio software updates or
It's a budgeting software which works in conjunction with Trio, which would replace the current cumbersome spreadsheet that we're using for the budgeting process.
and have you talked to Kitty about whether or not this type of expenditure?
I have not checked with Kitty on this, I don't know,
Well, she was there during the discussion, but I don't know if we necessarily
yeah.
commented one way or the other, but I traditionally, I can tell you basically her response is that under the original guidelines, some of these may have been more difficult to fit in. Under the revised guidelines, as long as you're staying under the 10 million revenue, basically revenue replacement, almost anything goes as long as it's an expenditure that basically would be a normal expenditure that the county would undertake.
So
Have we specifically gone over this? No. But she's seen all of them because we discussed them last week when we met, so.
So you feel very confident that this is an appropriate use of the funds?
I think for some type of supplemental software program to support Treasury would be, normally that would be something that the government would obviously have. And be something that could be articulated as being needed and assist.
If we didn't have ARPA, you'd be here with that request, you'd have to try to find that from CBA or something, so that would be a normal request, we're not,
Well, and the other thing is we need something moving forward, so that we're not relying on a spreadsheet that was designed by, an individual. Now, what about the ongoing cost? Is the ongoing cost really $20,000 a year?
The ongoing cost, yes, is 20,000 a year,
20,000 in,
Each year?
yes.
oh my God, no.
Yeah, that's a real expensive piece of
Well,
stuff.
that is.
What are, I see that this is being used in 3 communities or 3,
Yep, the town of
Government
Raymond, the
entities.
town of Saco, and Ogunquit.
what are other, I mean, what are the other municipalities? And I'm used to,
I don't know, I'd have to do more research, and I kept more research.
Yeah, so we talked about if this is something that would at least be something you might consider, that we could, again, refine it and come back with like more concrete information to support, whether it's this or something else. I mean, we may find something else that ends up fitting the need as well. But
in our memo, it says.
I see 20,000 for purchase.
Yep, and then it's $20,000 a year.
It says something about the ongoing would be in future budgets.
All right, but that's the case though, huh? Oh, Monica, that's, wow.
I just wanted to put it out there. I can do more research. I can see what other programs might be available.
Well, sticker shock there,
Yeah.
that is gonna keep us from taking action on this today, Monica, I think.
Okay, so my feeling is that this is certainly something that's needed, whether it's I mean, you need some way to move forward, you know, we know the pain you're having, so we need to resolve that.
so just to add to that, I mean, I get the sticker shock part of it with the same way, and by no means not expecting to take action, we definitely need. But also to keep in mind that this is something that's gonna apply for all of the county, all the departments. The software that's being looked at, all of them have the ability to integrate department heads and the budget advisory committee, and other people to have more access to the work, to the budget while they're doing the work as well. So it is sticker shock, but keep in mind it applies if you spread that out throughout the whole county and all the departments and all the people that are gonna benefit from it. You know, we spent a lot more in opera money this year alone just on single departments for software, so it's, you gotta look at it in the totality. So that's really what we're gonna bring back to you if you're interested in pursuing, is basically say, here's what everybody else is doing, here's what those costs look like. You know, will it be 20,000? Maybe not. Maybe we'll find that there's something much better and more affordable, and you won't need the sticker shock. But I guess what I'm saying is I would hope that you would shut it down just because of this one proposal and idea. It's more, today, the intent was to say, here's something we found, here's what you're looking at. If you set aside this, you know, we can come back to you if you're interested. But
I'd be more than willing to spend 20,000 for ARPA today. But the problem is that we can't use ARPA, you know, for the future
Right,
to pay the 20,000, so that's gonna become part of the budget.
right. Well, like he
I mean,
said, it just opens up the discussion that we need to look into finding a feasible
I don't think we
solution.
pay that much for Spillman maintenance, do we? We do?
Oh, yes.
How much do you pay for that?
Like 75, 80,000.
You're up to that now?
But I think it's fair to say that we certainly recognize the need for something like this, whether it's this or not, we don't know yet. But I think that's pretty path forward, is to, look around and see what's out there and see what you like best.
I mean, if you come back to us and say, we've looked at 5 others and every one of them are more expensive and they don't work as well,
Yeah.
that helps, you know,
Okay,
but right now, well,
Back and give us options.
so what do
You want action on,
I don't think it's.
I don't think it's needed,
Yeah.
but you don't need a motion that says the research options.
no, I mean, I think your prior motion handles where we need to go next.
What are we telling these other 2 entities who are making a request to?
Let's talk
So the MDI school, I called and talked with him again yesterday because I said if you wanted to get anything, you could have any type of realistic, serious consideration by the commission, you needed to have those materials to me by the end of last week, and he hadn't contacted me at all, so I followed up with him again. He is supposed to submit, or they are supposed to submit something to the commissioners, but he did kind of acknowledge to me that this was kind of an ongoing issue that they had some awareness of as well. And now it's just created this other problem because they found, I believe, other contaminants within the water and discharge there. So now they are kind of being forced to address the issue. So, but
Well,
right now, we're waiting on them to say, it's great that you want to come and ask, but we need to know what it is, why, and how much. So
yeah, a formal request.
Yeah.
Right now, it's just phone calls.
it's just basically just, hey, we were told the county has money.
Yeah, we'd like to
Basically,
learn, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, and then the next one is a little more formal. To me, this comes down to, you know, what we do in the next few meetings regarding, you know, we want to put money towards housing as we did with broadband and that kind of thing. What I saw as a logical next step, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if it's, again, this is another one of these things that if you're looking and think that that might be reasonable and something you want to pursue, then we certainly would have to come back with a more detailed plan and cost estimates and everything to present to you to see what that would look like.
Because we've actually had this request as well as another one prior.
So are we going to at least accept requests as they come in for ARPA funds?
Well,
I know when they came to CBA, we said that we weren't going to accept random requests, that we would open it up for grants and whatnot. To ARPA, if somebody wants to make a request, we would.
well, I think we really honestly haven't had a plan on how to move forward. That's sort of the logical next step is we get a few of these in and then say, okay, you know, we need to formalize this. You know,
Figure out but like what you've been requesting, figure out some kind of a pencil budget of where we're gonna go with the funds and then.
And plug these into that and then decide whether, you want to act on it. Yeah.
Michael.
So I think that would help us too. I mean, right now I have no mechanism to know necessarily, like if somebody calls up, well, yes, the county does have ARPA funds. If you want to submit a proposal, we can present it to the commissioner. But I don't know, like if I knew basically you've set aside 4 more projects and here's what each project entails, I can plug in from their description whether or not it's going to fit. So if they want something, that you've already funded or sent out grants to, like the nonprofit grants or things that you've already done, then I can just tell them, you missed the boat on that one. We don't have a program that meets that. Here's what we have. And,
So
basically that's it.
So we set up categories, and if somebody applies and it fits a category, we plug it in, and then we decide whatnot. Now, if somebody calls, notifies us that we'd like to have some help at an abortion clinic, and there's no category for that, then we tell them right up front, it doesn't fit fit our needs, fit our category, so.
And even some of these categories, like if you decide to pursue housing, then obviously based on the presentation Kitty gave, we're probably going to come back to you with some type of at least standards that you're going to evaluate these projects by,
Yeah,
which we don't currently have either, obviously.
Seems like you may need to set up an ARPA work session where you can sit down, go over our budget, the budget sheet with us, go over these ideas with different projects coming in through Kitty or through Michael, and come up with a plan so Michael would have a more concrete idea of your wishes and how you would like to see the spending.
Yeah,
So-
I think Monica's right, because if we can set up the categories based upon our request to date, it helps us meet the need as opposed to coming up with a category that nobody's asking for, and then we have, people out there wanting stuff that we have no category for, so.
well, and I think we need to listen to John, in a very near meeting, and then have that discussion, maybe in early April. I know it would be nice to do it sooner, but really by the time we hear John and digest that and maybe have some more information on these. I'm not sure that we can. I think we need that work session.
I think this conversation with John is gonna go on and on, because I say that because if you remember, John, when we first appropriated 5 million, we said that won't last long. We're gonna be dipping into it for more, remember? And we haven't spent 150,000 yet, so I mean.
Well, it sounds like he's got some ideas that he needs to present to us, and we don't know where that's gonna fit in here.
Mhm. Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying, so I think, keeping close contact with and talking to John is something we're gonna have to do on an ongoing basis.
So what are we thinking?
We're not gonna.
It sounds like we need a work session.
Right.
It sounds like we need to think about doing that, yes, sometime in March, early April.
If we do it on a second meeting, which is usually a later agenda.
Yeah.
We can fit it in, I think, without doing a separate day.
Okay, we ready to move on?
Do one discussion. It's from. About
Oh, yes, that's under you.
What is it?
The room, and yeah,
Let's see.
that's in the packet.
Under what?
Should have been in with the ARPA stuff,
It is-
We have one,
couple of pictures.
we have one sheet that's,
It's
but,
the stuff I put for you. For my one.
oh,
It's in that.
I see, it's on the backside of monuments.
Again, to me, that's,
Is this what the photographs were about?
yes. There's a memo there.
So Bob, have you gotten with Dennis at all and discussed anything yet?
We've discussed in the past, about climate control up there. It's just one of those things, other projects have been going on, and we just haven't had a real good chance to. I don't think it would be a major undertaking to rehab that area. It's just a matter of getting a lot of that stuff out of there and then fixing it up a little bit, the plaster, the little opening to the roof that's, you can see daylight through it, which means it's not weather tight. Just protection of the equipment.
So to me, this is when I look at it, I mean, it makes total sense that we can use. I think we'd be able to use this funds for, but it's gonna be, you guys getting together and figuring out what is it gonna take to get where you wanna go? And then, Dennis is gonna have to figure out how that's gonna happen, if it's gonna be in-house, who we're gonna have to hire, if that's the case. Everything that entails.
And that stuff has to be up there. I mean, there's no other,
Well, the
Or-
antennas, the antenna mast is right there.
Okay.
That's where the stuff's been historically. It's been kind of out of sight, out of mind.
Well, I think that's the first question, you asked technicians, it said, how far can we be with our transmitter from the antenna? If he says it's, 100 feet, well, that gives us a lot of options to get out of the attic. And that's what, I think, to me, so,
No, we can, I mean, certainly outside.
yeah, because I think even if you rehab it, it's still fairly out of sight.
well, access.
Yeah.
I mean, that's major to try to change access to that without that ladder, so I think best case scenario is that you can get your equipment out of that space to a more desirable space, even if it requires a long lead from your transmitter to your antenna, so. I mean, when you stop and think about it, if a transmitter's on a tower, and it's on a 100-foot tower, you've got a 100-foot lead from
Oh,
the
sure,
antenna
yeah.
to the transmitter, so I mean, why couldn't there be a 100-foot lead from our transmitter?
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, no, again, this is something this has to be solved, and
Yeah, right.
in your memo of last month, you made a pretty good case for doing that. What do you have in mind? And
I think you've got the blessing from us
Yeah.
in terms of,
See what's
that
best.
we wanna fix it, you guys need to figure out what the best route is to fix it, come back with proposals. Keep us updated on where you're at.
is that all of them? No, there's one, That's all.
That's good.
Okay, we're ready to move on? Okay, UT. First up is the monthly report. I don't know, Miller, do we have that? I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Just that I got a request from the Aurora Fire Chief for a street light at the intersection of Route 9 and Route 193. These are both DOT roads. So I would like to approach DOT and see if they will put the street light up. If not, I'll come back to the commissioners and see if the county wants to pay for a street light. We have a lot of intersections in the UT, but most of them are dead end roads, and the people that live on the roads know where the stop sign is. But Route 193 is a connector between Route 1 and Route 9. So it gets a lot of traffic from people that don't know the road. And they tend to overshoot the stop sign and end up out in the middle of Route 9 with the killer bees. So a street light might help, and that's the request from the fire chief that has responded to accidents there. So I will look into that and see if I can get DOT to do it, and if not, I'll come back to the commissioners and see if you want to fund a street light.
Miller, would you also take a few minutes and try to get a cost of an illuminated, flashing illuminated stop sign that has a, what do you call it, solar panel? Have you seen those?
Yes. Yep.
There's one right here in Ellsworth on Pine Street. It was a bad intersection, four-way. They put up, all it is just flashes around the sign, and there's a solar panel that keeps it, the battery.
That might be better than a street light.
I think so. If the issue there is people noticing how much better could we do than illuminate the signs,
Okay, I'll look into it.
Okay. I'm going to move that we accept and file the UT monthly report as presented.
Seconded.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So unanimous. Next up is review and approve the agreement for regional animal control officer between town of Deer Isle and county of Hancock. There's a few of them here. I don't know if you want to take them all separately or.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Miller, these are all the same except for the town, correct?
Yes.
Gentlemen, do you have any issues with any parts of these? John, you're all set?
Yeah.
All?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm going to move to approve the agreement for the regional animal control officer between the town of Deer Isle and the county of Hancock.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
I'm going to move that we approve the agreement for the regional animal control officer between the town of Brooklyn and the county of Hancock.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye. I'm going to move that we approve the agreement for the regional animal control officer between the town of Hancock and the county of Hancock.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 I'm going to move that we approve the agreement for the regional animal control officer between the town of Lemoyne and the county of Hancock.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to move that we approve the agreement for regional animal control officer between the town of Trenton and the county of Hancock.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Miller, any success in getting an application for ACL?
No. And Mike would have received them, not me, I think. I've had nobody call with any interest.
Some of these towns had ACO offices. They're not interested in doing it on a regional basis, or what's going on?
Well, I think the towns that are involved in this, the ACO officer they had retired and doesn't want to do it anymore.
Didn't we have?
Goodsboro and Winter Harbor, the police departments were doing it, and wanted to get out of animal control, but I have not heard back from those towns whether they're going to continue or not.
Yeah.
I have Stonington's document in hand. I got it too late to get on this agenda.
Well, there's no urgency. If we don't-
Sorrento's and Stonington's Board of Selectmen met last night. So I haven't heard whether they signed or not.
Well, there's no urgency to sign that because if there's no ACO, there's no.
That's right.
So, do we? It's something.
The ad has been on the MMA website, but it has not hit the Alta American yet.
As I understand it, should be either advertised this week or next week. I hope it's this week, but we had sent it over to them and I had a confirmation that it been received and all that. And then Miller and I talked a week or two ago and I followed up with them and the lady's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, well, I got confirmation right here that says you received it. So, why isn't it posted? She was supposed to put it in hopefully this week, but if not this week, then next week. So it'll get back in there, but I don't think that that's our challenge. The challenge is the part-time position, patrol for a vast area. So, I mean, it may require, I guess, targeted, more aggressive, like word of mouth advertising to get people that might, because you may be able to get somebody, but the question is it a person that you really want doing that job that's going to uphold to the standards that the county wants for this program? And I think Miller just said it before, if you don't get the right person, this could kill the program pretty quick and potentially any future regional types of programs that the county would look at. So definitely you don't want to hide Joe Blow off the street. So.
Yeah.
And I think we're looking at two things. We're looking at part-time work that isn't overly popular. People want full-time work with benefits. And animal control isn't the most popular job in the world. So to get somebody to fill this position,
it takes time.
The pay scale is good, but again, it's part-time with no benefits. So,
Well, and as more communities express interest, we may have to evaluate that.
Well, especially if we get so many that the part-time employees working over 40 hours, now we have a wage and labor issue to deal with. So.
yes.
All right. I don't think it's anything else.
Next time on Fancy Magazine.
Okay, we ready to move on?
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. Airport, we have Leroy's monthly report. Anything to add, Leroy?
Nope, I got nothing.
I'm going to move to accept and file the airport monthly report as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? All in favor? Aye.
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 Unanimous. Okay, request approval for modification 1 of the Jacobs Engineering contract for the Caruso Drive short-term parking and apron repair at a cost of $235,520. Chair to sign.
So, Leroy, help me understand, this modification we're modifying an original contract somewhere?
Right. Yes. And my internet's a little spotty this morning. So, but yes, that is we approved them to start the process, and I believe it was not to exceed $10,000. This is the balance of now that they've already been into it, that this needs to go out to bid within the next. I think they want to open the bids within 3 weeks to get it in this year's budget cycle.
So this is their fee for the project?
Their fee for the project, correct.
What do you anticipate the project to cost?
They haven't given me that number yet.
I mean, isn't engineering fees usually, what, 10, 15% of the projects? Is that a round number, gentlemen? Do you know?
I don't think this project is going to be that high. I would say we're probably looking at, I'm going to say 500,000-600,000.
It just floors me how much we're paying Jacobs to engineer projects. I mean, when he adds 50% of the cost of the project just in engineering and oversight, holy cow.
Well, a lot of that is managing the FAA's process.
Yeah,
I'm still overwhelmed that it's cost us another 50% in engineering and oversight for these things.
I agree with you. When I look at these numbers, it's mind boggling that, it seems so simple, looking out from the outside and just, I have problems grasping.
2 years ago, we approved Jacobs for a 5-year contract for engineering. So it's not like we can go out to bid for somebody to do these engineering.
Yeah, but again, a lot of this is dictated by the FAA.
All right, but perhaps if I knew all that, I'd understand it, but and of course you get government involved, it doesn't.
Yeah.
They're the ones actually paying for it.
Is this an AIP project total?
This will be an AIP project, yeah, and all of this will fold into that AIP project.
But that's 90%, right?
Yeah, 90%. We pay 5%.
I'm going to move to approve modification number 1 of the Jacobs Engineering contract for the Crusoe Drive short-term parking and apron repair at the cost of $235,520 and authorized chair to sign.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Second is request approval of amendment 1 to the Trenton Volunteer Fire Department lead ARFF MOU and the chair to sign. We have a memo.
Well, in short, Leroy, what was the modification that was necessary? What are we changing?
The short version was the cost of living increase. The 7% cost of living increase is what that entailed.
Okay, so that's the only change, really?
That's the only change. That was the only thing we changed was the max allowable.
So I'm going to move to approve amendment number 1 of the Trenton Volunteer Fire Department lead ARF MOU and for the chair to sign.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Now we do have Michael, I don't know if you want to.
Just real quick. So just for part of the discussion, I mean, it doesn't necessarily impact this. I did talk to Leroy about whether or not, this had to be done today, but this particular amendment, obviously, as he just stated, is basically just affecting the pricing, but to let the county commissioners know, and I think I put that in my recent memos, we have been advised that we need to start looking at these MOUs and agreements that are out there because the particular amendments or sections or agreements don't necessarily include indemnification clauses or insurance requirements and other language that really should be built into any contracts or agreements that we have to protect the county. Even as simple as identifying in this case, which we had to take a step back and do, are these actual contractors? Are they employees of the, what's the extent of the agreement? So going forward, especially when we have some of these, we really ought to be negotiating with the different entities that way, even if there are longstanding agreements like this, to see if both parties are willing to modify language. And that doesn't mean what you do today doesn't allow us to still have that conversation going forward, which I think might be Leroy's argument too, that to be able to proceed. But we do need to start looking at all those countywide, not just for the airport, but in other entities as well.
When you say looking for, in other words, perhaps getting legal advice, advice.
The legal advice that I got was the county needs to start looking at those, and the suggestion was yes, no, and not necessarily to the lawyer that suggested it. You can have your own counsel, you can have whoever you want look at it, but some of these agreements have legal implications, and the county should be looking at it because you're not protected.
Well, call me old-fashioned, but there's a saying out there that somebody that represents themselves in court has a fool for a client. Well, I think that was made by an attorney upset he lost a fee, but nevertheless, I'm forgetting the Fox saying, you ought to let me watch your hen house here because, and I'm just saying, is this something that we can somehow become a little more, skilled at and do it ourselves as opposed to, I've seen this county, Michelle, you can remember how many times they want to stop and give it to an attorney. And, it cost us $1,000 for a one-page letter, and I'm just saying that
here's my professional advice. We can do it on our own, and I can include language into these agreements going forward. I mean, I know what it is, I've seen other agreements and all that. Does that mean that you're gonna have an agreement that's gonna be defendable and if challenged, it's not gonna cost the county money? Now, you can pay $1,000 to a lawyer today, or you can lose a lawsuit and have to pay $400,000 because you didn't want to pay $1,000. Does anybody get rich out of it? Yes, the attorney. There's no doubt about that. It gets back to your level of comfort. As an administrator, I say to you, you want to make sure all the agreements and contracts you have out there are protecting the county. And if that means you need to, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say they need to draw it up, but if that means you need to pay for a half an hour or an hour to have an attorney scan down through it, that might make more sense before it goes out the door, because when we do get into the legal stuff, it is gonna cost a lot more. And, you know, we can do nothing, and I'm not suggesting that, but I think within the next, you know, couple of years, we're probably gonna see what may or may not happen as a result of some of these agreements. So we just, I'm bringing it to your attention because it brought to my attention. Do I say we hired a lawyer that told us that? No, hell no. But, you know, do we start looking at potentially setting aside more money on these legal agreements? Maybe, but we definitely need to try to be including this type of language in those agreements at a minimum. And then I'll say to you what I used to tell my other counselors. I'm not an attorney, so I'm not. So I can put stuff in these agreements, but that doesn't mean that it's 100% legal.
Well, of course, I don't want to sit here a year from now and say, you know, remember when Mike told us to do it, and I said I didn't think we should? So I'm not gonna be a bad guy.
No, I certainly agree with our administrator that we should. The first few gonna cost a little, yes, I think, but once we get that, I think they will become boilerplate as you think it should be. But right now, I agree. I think that, you know, agreements like this protect both sides. Let's make sure that they do that. And don't become adversarial. So I don't know what the suggestion is that this is an amendment to an agreement that's already in place. So it's not like a new agreement, but should we be taking this chance to formalize the agreement is the question, yes.
So essentially, in order to do that, we'd obviously have to go back to the other party and propose something to them to consider and all that. This, in effect, obviously doesn't change the original agreement that the county's had, I'm presuming, for a while. But at least.
Do we know that, Leroy? This has been in place for.
Yeah, this is just this is year number 2 on this. So, if I may interject, I got some rental car agreements that are coming up, and maybe that's the time for us to take one of those agreements and send it off to council and have them make sure the wording in there to protect everybody, and we can start using that wording, as you said, as a boilerplate material to be in there.
I think we should charge the county administrator with that responsibility and let him decide to what extent he wants to do it. I'd like to, I guess now, after all I've said, I guess when you present us with an MOU or a contract that you feel confident that we're protected under it, you've taken some steps. So that's what I'd like to look at.
Okay, so that begs the question, what do we do with this one? Do we approve this one and move on from there, or it didn't sound like this was time sensitive.
Well, I don't see a renewal clause in contract, Leroy.
There wasn't a renewal clause. It was really open-ended. So, when we looked at cost of living increase, it was like, maybe we ought to change that portion of it all. And it was just the dollar part of it that we was looking at.
Says it shall remain at such time as formally terminated, so.
Michael, what's your?
So, it does also say it can be amended by written agreement. So there's nothing to say that you couldn't approve this today to at least solidify this component of it. And And then we go back to them and say, now that we've done this, we'd like to have a conversation though about the original agreement and the overall content of that, and maybe suggest a written amendment that we could come back to you with that has, because right now I don't have anything to give to you, obviously.
Yeah.
But come back and know that it's something that they're gonna agree to as well, other than them saying, no, we're not interested, so we're just gonna terminate this thing, and you're on your own. Which I doubt they would do, but I mean, again, it's always a possibility. But
So are you comfortable with us? This has been moved and seconded. You are.
But I do think we ought to at least approach the issue with them and go back and explain some of our concerns. Or at least I explain what I've discussed with the commissioners, and, we'll see where we go from there, I guess.
Agreement, okay, so we're ready to vote on this motion? No further discussion?
No, we
No,
didn't vote.
it was moved
It was
and
moved and seconded.
Oh,
We're not gonna call for a vote. So that's what I'm doing now. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So unanimous, we're ready to move on.
I'm going to move that we approve Fred Erlenbach of Trenton to the Airport Advisory Board.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So unanimous. EMA, we have Shanky's report. Is there anything?
No, he's not here.
Yeah, the both of him and the deputy are away right now at another event. So.
I'm going to move to accept and file the EMA monthly report as presented.
Here,
And Leroy, is there something we're supposed to take action on the land use?
But, was that for me?
Yeah.
yes.
No, I don't think so.
Everything we need to do.
Where do you see?
No, we had taken action on that. But that's the last item, the land use change to non-aeronautical.
Oh, yeah, no, that's not,
Yeah.
that's not completed yet. That was just for what it's worth. That project is moving forward. We've had a couple of recent stumbling blocks, so that'll be coming back eventually. But I just wanted to let everybody know that was still out there and ongoing.
Okay.
Okay, now EMA,
Motion on the floor
was,
to accept and file the report.
okay, it has,
Seconded.
okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Jail. First up is approval to promote Corrections Officer Michael Butters to the rank of corporal effective February 11th.
I'm going to move to approve the promotion of Michael Butters to the rank of corporal effective February 11th, 2023.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Tim, I don't know if you had anything to add.
He's been a corporal before, he just will move him back up to that position. He's all trained, ready to go.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye. I'm going to move to remove James Williams from the county payroll.
Moved and seconded. Tim, do you have
Nope.
any further questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm going to move to approve the promotion of Teresa Torrey to full-time corrections officer with all applicable benefits at step 9A effective February 11th, 2023.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm going to move to approve the employment of Logan Ellsworth as full-time corrections officer with all applicable benefits and step 9A effective February 18, 2023.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Tim, you
Nope. all good.
further discussion or questions? All in favor? Aye.
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 So unanimous.
That just leaves us one position short, and we have 2 applicants in the process right now, so we're looking to post that next meeting, so.
Wow, that's great.
That's a kiss of death, huh? Telling us that.
Good news, thank you. Okay, next up is the sheriffs, and we do have a.
He said to go ahead with the gender if you're all set with it.
Okay, so first up is request for equity of comp time for supervisors. We have a memo. Scroll on here. Sheriff. A lot of airport stuff. Okay, dated January 26th. I don't know if you want to add to that or touch on anything.
It's just trying to catch everyone up with what the other supervisors are having. Currently, the chief deputy position is being compensated at 6 hours per on-call day for the weekend, where the patrol lieutenants receive 8.5.
So I'm going to move to compensate the jail administrator for on-call pay at the same rate as the lieutenant.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Questions?
You and the jail administrator
Separate.
separate.
No,
So you're just doing, this is just a jail.
just the jail administrator, yeah.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye. I'm going to move to compensate the chief deputy for on-call at the same rate as lieutenants.
Seconded.
Seconded. Any questions or comments?
Okay, Michelle? You seem hesitant.
It's my understanding that they are compensated on their, how many hours per day they work. So the chief deputy works a 40-hour week at 8 hours, where your lieutenants work 42.5 on an 8.5-hour day. So that's the reason why the difference in the compensation is 8.5 hours for a lieutenant for each on-call day, and the chief deputy has an 8-hour day.
So is the compensation of lieutenant 17 or 16?
17.
Okay, but the request here is 8 hours per day.
Correct.
So chief deputy would be 16.
As opposed to.
So that is incorrect, because
It's day per day.
yeah, but when I say the same rate, that's not correct.
Right.
So we want to say, move to compensate the chief deputy for on-call at,
8 hours a day.
well, it's at the 16 hours
For the
weekend.
weekend.
Yeah.
So 8 hours per
8 hours
day.
per day.
Okay, so 8 hours today is what we should say.
That's correct, right?
8 hours per day.
Yeah.
So it would be 16 hours for the weekend, yes.
Yeah.
On-call at the rate of 16 hours, 8 hours a day.
Yes.
I'm going to move to compensate the chief deputy for on-call at the rate of 8 hours per day.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Does that, that's
We all
not,
set? Okay. Now
that's not the exact wording that's in the memo, but I think it accomplishes the same thing.
Well, I'm looking at
Is that-
Michelle, she has that, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that proposal.
Okay.
Okay. Everybody clear? No further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So unanimous.
Do you want to do the same jail administrator? Verbiage for the jail administrator?
Well, is it the same deal apply?
Yeah, Chef and Sauce, they work 40 hours, they get 60.
They get 16?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. What's
They get 16 for the week.
who?
Sauce, you, when we're on call up there, they get 16 hours.
Okay, and so we're giving you the same 16 hours?
Yeah, 16.
So that doesn't need to be fixed, right?
No, that doesn't need to be fixed because there's no difference between.
There's no difference between the lieutenant and
Oh, in the jail, right, okay, we're good.
Okay,
Just
yeah,
for
right.
the jail, yep, we're good.
That's what, I was just going by this memo.
Yeah,
I
no, we're
think.
good.
Okay.
Lieutenant Jim.
Okay. Okay. We're ready for the discussion on the sale of a 2017 cruiser to the local fire department. Okay. I don't know if you want to introduce
I
anything.
believe the sheriff said that he had already sent up the paperwork on that for the appraisal.
Yeah. Yes, he did. So what we have before us is, there's a trade-in retail breakdown, from JD Power, and then something similar, with Blue Book. I don't know if you see those two documents. And then, this is for the town of,
This town of Sullivan's,
Well, the town of Sullivan is interested in purchasing this cruiser.
it's the Sullivan Fire Department?
That's correct. They want to use it for their
Right.
EMS personnel.
so I guess the question is here, at what amount? And if we're interested in doing. And I don't know if you have the documents in front of you, or if you want me to paraphrase the
No,
documents.
it's paraphrasing it, they're either side of 10 grand, right?
Well, the trade-in value on, they're a little bit different. The trade-in value is basically 10,542, or that's sort of an average of the range on the Kelly. And on the JD, it's,
8,400 after the adjustment.
84 to 10.9, yeah.
Well, this particular car was replaced with one of the ones we bought from ARPA funds, is that correct?
Yes,
All right, so the sheriff did not suffer from his budget when he purchased, and we allowed him to purchase 8 new cars at the cost of $480,000. So it's not like he needs to recoup, the actual cost of these vehicles.
Well, that's somewhat incorrect, because there is a value for the trade-in in his budget.
that's correct. This,
Yeah. But I'm just saying, let's not get greedy. I mean, after all, he wants his revenue, but he doesn't want to spend his budget. He didn't have to spend his budget. It was ARPA funds. The point I'm trying to make too is that we're talking about another government agency within Hancock County. People were, we'd like to serve and help and whatnot. And I would like to give them a break on this, and I'd like to sell it to them for $5,000.
So at half of,
Well, it's 8,400 is the JD Power cost of trade-in, so I'm giving them
84 to 10 to 11, we're gonna round.
Slash is the retail cost.
Oh, trade-in and retail, so, okay, so that's the trade-in. And then the trade-in on the other is 10.5, so I agree with your sentiments, but I mean, we do have to be fair to, we're doing something for one community here at the expense of the other communities, because we are taking away some trade-in, some revenue through the budget, so.
But you take that $3,000 or $4,000 break that we're giving you, you spread that out over the other 32 communities around Hancock County, is insignificant. But to the town of Sullivan, $3,000 to the fire department is a lot of money. And I think this is a good opportunity for us to provide a service to them and
I personally would be a little more comfortable if we were in that, that range as opposed to half of it, but I'm not the one making the motion, so.
What was the sheriff's recommendation on the sale?
didn't have one, did he?
Was there anything?
I don't believe he had a recommendation. I know he wants to help town of Sullivan out. Quite honestly, I think 5,000 probably is in the range of where they were looking to be able to get something as well. So I think that would be fair.
Okay, so that changes things if Sheriff's Department. Is that a fair sentiment? That do you think that's fair?
I believe it is fair.
Okay,
So I'm gonna make that on the motion then, that we move to sell to the Sullivan Fire Department a used 2017 Ford Cruiser at the cost of $5,000.
Seconded.
moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so unanimous. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, District Attorney's Office. First up is accept the resignation of Administrative Assistant Michelle Potter effective February 17th, 2023.
I'm gonna move to accept the resignation of Michelle Potter effective February 17th, 2023, and thank her for her service.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Anything to add?
Sorry to see her go.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So unanimous.
So I'm gonna move to permit the district attorney to advertise for the position of administrative assistant.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion or any comments?
No, I think it was already, may have already started to be advertised.
Yeah, already what?
It's already been advertised.
No, we
We discussed it.
discussed it and there was some time sensitive. It was important to do so, and it's a position in the budget. When I discussed.
Well, you guys said, go ahead.
This is the formal.
Not to put it on Paul, I did talk to Paul about it.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So unanimous. Request permission to hire legal interns.
I've got a law student that's interested in interning in our office this summer. He's got great qualifications. We're short-staffed, I'm getting a lot of pressure. Jail administrators, sheriff, to try and address our jail population and try and deal with some of the folks who've been in there pre-trial, who've already accrued a fair amount of time, and trying to get some resolution to some of those cases, and hopefully reduce some of the population. And even if the intern herself does not specifically handle that, she can fill in on some of the other more administrative tasks to free up a prosecutor, try and start looking at that issue.
And I also hear from, departments, saying that we are backlogged, going back from, early COVID time. And this sounds like a way to help chip away at that.
Well, my understanding is that, and Michelle can certainly address it, is we have the funds in the budget. We can just move the line items.
The portion. So unfortunately, DA Granger wasn't here when we did the budget, so he didn't know that he would want an intern. So we're now looking at where we might be able to move some funds. And so looking at the budget and doing an analysis, I was able to come up with 4,000. I'm not sure if maybe there's wiggle room for the other 2,000. But currently, for transcripts, we have $1,000 budgeted, and for witness fees, we have $3,000 budgeted. We didn't use that last year. We typically haven't been using that because I've been getting checks from the extradition account. And I don't know if you're familiar with the extradition account, but what that is the bail money funds that come in from Washington and Hancock County. And so I've been, in the statute says that we can use that for witness fees, transcripts, things that are around like any kind of trials, things like that. So we're okay with the transcripts. I don't see that being depleted. It's been staying steady because of the funds that have been brought in. I know there's some murders that are going to come through for Washington County, but even for AG witness fees, I'm not getting excessive fees.
What about extradition funds that are used for office expenses?
You can't use those for office. No, the extradition funds are specific for witness fees, things like that.
So the 4,000 that you can come up with doesn't include extradition funds?
Right, we couldn't for this.
Right.
I'm saying if we use the witness fees that are in our budget that are allotted and the transcripts, we would continue
Witness
to
fees and
cover.
transcripts, okay, so you don't have a suggestion for the remaining two?
I don't.
Okay.
Other than, I don't want to put words in your mouth, other than if we overspend by $2,000, you see that there's gonna be room in the budget elsewhere to cover that. Is that a fair assessment of what you said or no?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
I know there's definitely 4,000. We shot for 6,000. I know DA Granger wasn't opposed to like a lesser amount if we weren't able to come up with more than the 4,000. But looking at it, I know the expenses for office supplies and stuff have increased, so I didn't dare tap into office
Okay.
supplies or anything like that.
So I'm going to move that that we approve the employment of Erin McGrath as a legal intern, pay her $4,000 from the witness fee and transcript funds account, and to contribute $2,000 from the ARPA funds towards her compensation if necessary at the end of the year. What that means is that if at the end of the year, he's got 2,000 surplus in his budget, he'll use that. If not, we'll cover the balance.
through, not through ARPA, through
You said CBA.
Well,
CBA.
yeah, but
Can, I mean,
this is applicable for us.
so basically, Kitty, because I specifically asked this question, just assuming this might come up, but she said basically that this would not fall necessarily under the original ARPA guidelines, but would be eligible under the revenue loss guidelines, sorry.
And if we have the choice, I'd rather go after the CBA. We can back it up with CBA if we find out after it's not, but maybe move it to if there's 2,000 surplus in his budget on December 31st.
Okay, so that, well, because I thought you said CBA in one place and ARPA in the
I
other.
said CBA before we started, Tim, based upon
Okay,
comments from my colleague.
Okay.
Seconded.
moved and seconded, everybody's clear what they're voting on. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you, Mr.
Thank you
Mayor.
very much.
Thank you. Sorry to see you go, thank you.
Sorry to go, thank you.
Next up is maintenance. We have the maintenance facilities director's memo, monthly report in front of us. Anything to add?
I'm going to move to accept and file a maintenance monthly report as presented.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Dennis, anything to add, or are you all set?
With the report?
Yep,
Yeah, good.
okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, unanimous. Next up is request permission to go out to bid for middle and accessory roof for,
Can we get back? Can we go back first of all and take care of his outstanding issue first?
Sure can.
Are you ready for
I
that
am.
bid?
I
It's
am.
the bid opening.
oh, okay, I was just gonna put that in.
Well,
Okay.
I've already
Let's
cut it in.
do that now.
Yeah, I'm prepared to recommend the commission accepts this bid of $87,750. And this is for a new stair set with heat, snow melt included.
It keeps the snow melt included.
We're gonna utilize hot water loops already in place throughout the building by a heat exchanger to make a snow melt, cascading snow melt, similar to the one we have by the employee entrance.
And that's in this.
That's in this price.
What's that amount?
$87,750.
And what's the official name of this project?
Sheriff's steps replacement.
So I'm going to move that we accept the bid from Gardner Concrete for $87,750 for the sheriff's steps replacement project.
Seconded.
To be paid for,
To be paid for out of what?
or was this a,
Oh, this was under the,
that's what I need clarification on.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons I mentioned before. You remember before the $1.5 million ramp project was an ARPA project.
yeah,
And we didn't know at the time whether this would qualify as a standalone project, just the steps. So I agreed that even if it's a capital expense, I would do it, but since the revision of the guidelines has taken place, maybe you feel it might qualify.
If it does, I want
I would have to confirm it with Kitty if you want her opinion. But I mean, again, using the same standard under the revenue loss, that you have up to 10 million that you can do with projects that way. And presumably the remaining amount the county was awarded is going to be tied to broadband or other eligible projects, but obviously we have to discuss that in future meetings.
Yeah, and when that was mentioned to me, Michael, you might agree with this. It occurred to me that since we're already in a position to make it a capital expense, it is something that the county would have ordinarily paid for as a repair or
to. So it
replacement.
stands a good chance of
So I would
qualifying.
think,
Okay, so I'm gonna move then. I'm gonna move to accept the bid from Gardner Concrete for $87,750 for the sheriff's step replacement project paid for from the ARPA funds if permissible. And so at some point, Dennis, you'll confirm that. If not, you'll have to come back and we'll talk about taking it out of something else.
Well,
G account.
and it's gonna come out of that 15, of that 1.5
Sorry.
that's already been, because we took action on this.
Only to pencil in some amount.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I mean, so, yeah, and this would be a good example
Yeah, so there's gonna be a big
Exactly.
balance.
of capital projects as a category, and we plug that in. Seconded.
Moving second, everybody's clear what we're voting on?
Yes.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So unanimous.
What's the time frame, Dennis? for-
Thank you. Well, that's a great question. I gotta talk to Gardner about that. There is a completion date. And this is a bonded job. I think completion date October 31, 2023. That gives
October
them
31.
the summer, October 31. And
Well, I mean, companies right now are doing their summer planning right now, so,
yeah, we stand a good chance of this being early midsummer.
and even if it didn't get done till, that's before snowfall anyway, so.
Exactly.
I'd be interested in knowing too what your specifics are for handling traffic and so on. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna reroute everything through the existing employee entrance. And then the talks with the sheriff and previously Pat and now Corey. Most of the patrolmen can use that back door and we'll do so gladly. It doesn't matter to them. But for the public, they come through this way or they'll come up through the entry steps. We'll put up provisional signage and a provisional life safety protocol that brings people to that door for exit as well. It'll mean making a little hallway down there public again for a bit, but nothing's changed security wise there. We've got the courts or the court clerk's files down there in EMA, but they're under all pretty secure. You know, nothing's changed since we locked off that quarter anyway, so should be pretty easy.
Great, so we voted on that.
We haven't voted yet.
Yes.
We
I
did.
think they did, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, request permission to go out to bid for middle and accessory roof replacement on the main courthouse.
Where is that, Dennis? What's that?
That is,
Do I have that?
this is the sheriff's here. And this is the elevator tower.
Yep.
And the roof over, like, this is where the stairwell to the third floor is. This is the clerk's area, like there's the men's room that you use. And there's the
It's right up over this,
clerk's,
Yeah.
right over here and up.
yeah, okay. I'm gonna move to permit the maintenance director to go out to bid.
And also this ramp down.
Yeah, okay.
Where it connects.
Move to permit the maintenance director to go out to bid for the middle and accessory roof replacement project.
Moving and second, any further discussion or questions?
How long have you had this baby in the works?
Say again, John?
How long have you had this baby in the works?
Been a while.
Just curious.
Yeah, this is something that we've noticed nuisance leaking, had a bunch of repairs. I wanted to go to bid for this last year, but we had other circumstances that made a project like this adding on top of what Monica was dealing with anyway, and the disjointed,
This is like a similar like roofing that we just did.
this will be an EPDM, yeah, that polymembrane that we put on the sheriff's roof, identical.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. And then there's no update on the court system and any plans that they,
No, except that, as we've discussed, the Foster houses, they've let that wither on the line. That's not gonna happen.
They're not gonna buy that?
No,
She doesn't want to sell, or
they don't feel it's adequate.
they don't think what's that?
The lot and the house, I get, discussions with the city about removal of the house in that historic district, I guess didn't go that way.
They could,
There's other factors. They did some elevation surveys and thought about maybe even a tunnel under to get to current facilities and other offices. And would we relocate the DA to this office? It became it's a boondoggle at this point.
Gentlemen, I'd like to have a discussion at some point to discuss negotiating with Ruth for the property.
She has stated that she's desirous of the county to
Take it.
have that property.
So if we could just keep that in mind and perhaps at some point put that on the agenda and talk about specifics on that.
I'd be happy to put it on my calendar.
Well, I think we'll work with Michael and Paul on the agenda items and whatnot, but I'd like to.
okay, any other questions for facilities director? Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah, thank you.
Next up is the RCC monthly report. So we have it before us. Add.
I'm going to move to accept and file the RCC monthly report as presented.
Seconded.
Any further discussion or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So unanimous. Request approval for temporary hire.
So we have, one of our employees is out on indefinite medical leave, which has created a vacancy during the daytime. Unfortunately, I just had another new hire that I hired over the last couple of weeks, because he resigned over the weekend as well, so creating another vacancy. So my desire or intent would be to bring on one of our part-timers, any temporary on a regularly scheduled shift to fill in that a portion of the vacancy during the daytime to minimize overtime costs and the additional work the people that are already filling in overtime just for regular vacations and sick time. I have one part-time dispatcher that has expressed interest in filling that position 8 hours per shift. So it'd be 3 8-hour shifts one week and 4 8-hour shifts the next week to tide us through until that dispatcher that's out on medical can return.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you want to bring a part-timer on to fill a full-time position temporarily, that requires approval. And it's working temporary as a full-time. But if you want to bring a part-timer on to work a substantial number of hours of that vacancy, that's your prerogative. Is that correct, Michael?
And you're subject to any union.
So I have spoken with the union because this is it's a sick time issue versus vacation or comp time, which they have to bid for overtime. We can manage that with resources as we need to. The union was amenable to doing this temporarily. I don't see it being more than 60 days, may not be that long. And we can't do that. It's just, this would allow us to give this part-timer some stability on knowing that this is hours that are going to be available to you as she,
But why does that require our approval? Isn't it just a management issue?
and there all could be. I just wanted to verify that it was. that we
I
weren't
don't-
doing anything
I don't think
outside
we-
of the-
I don't think we have that responsibility. I think that's a management, that's your prerogative to manage and you're not establishing a temporary full-time position.
No.
You're just using a part-time person a lot, which is no different what the jail does.
And it's an existing employee, correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
This
so
is,
we're
so
not
this is
approving-
not filling
not
a
hiring.
full-time position. This is just giving a part-timer more hours.
Right.
4 hours to fill a portion of a full-time vacancy
Which is,
temporarily.
same as most part-time do. You know, that's why a vacancy occurs, you work your part-time if you can, yeah.
Well, that was just a discussion we had. Just wanted to verify that it was not, we weren't setting a precedent or doing anything out of the ordinary, just getting that second check.
So I'm going to just say for the record and whatnot, I don't see that this requires any action by the commission. Good luck to you.
And we're in agreement with that, Michael?
Yeah, I don't see an issue with that.
Great,
Excellent. Thank you.
thank you. Treasurer,
I want to move to approve the monthly bills and warrants as presented.
Seconded.
any discussion or questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So unanimous. Next is the recapitulation assessment of county tax, commissioner's approval and signature.
I guess it's pretty straightforward now that we have the information from the
Yes.
state.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to move to approve and sign the recapitulation assessment of the county tax as presented.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Do we have that document?
Yes, it's in your,
It's right there. Okay, we'll do that before we leave.
yes.
Okay.
Commissioners, Down East Community Partners recommendation to appointment of John Wambacher to the Down East Community Partners Board of Directors.
And Joan, you're willing to serve on that?
Yeah.
I'm going to move to approve the appointment of John Wambacher to the Down East Community Partners Board of Directors.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So unanimous.
I'm going to move to approve paying travel expenses for commissioners living over 5 miles from the county seat.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
You know, I've always been intrigued by the wording of this because if you lived 1 mile beyond the county line in Orland, you'd be over 10 miles from the courthouse, but you wouldn't get your expenses paid. You know what I mean?
I guess I have to think about that.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted to make the motion, the courthouse, but I wanted to follow the statute says county seat. So
Oh,
I just, we'll follow the statute. We all know what it means.
Okay.
Present board isn't affected by that. We both live more than.
Okay, next up is authorization for treasurer and county administrator to issue checks up to $1,000.
Move to approve permitting the treasurer and county administrator to issue checks up to $1,000.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So unanimous. Discussion on the proposed rules of order and meeting and agenda policy. Michael?
So I did make a couple revisions based on the specific comments that were made during the workshop. And then I went back and compared and contrasted, again, not knowing what, because I know all of you were gonna do the same thing as well, not knowing what you were gonna decide, but I did pull out a couple elements of the existing policy that I thought should have been included. And one, just clarifying under 1A, that ultimately it is the commissioner's responsibility to ensure that the meetings are being done appropriately, which you obviously hand off to me and others to do, so. The agenda itself, kind of just, again, trying to make sure that everything coordinates between the existing policy whenever possible and the new proposed rules of order. This at least 7 days keeps in line with what we do. We usually give department heads as much notice as we can, so that's really not a problem anyway, but, and then emphasizing that, that anybody that desires to have stuff, we would request that they provide the narrative and other information associated with other materials that you need to make informed decisions on. Distribution, basically, kind of consistent with what we're doing right now. Deadline, so basically getting rid of the definitive not later than 5 p.m. Because that had created some discussion and concerns. And then indicated that thereafter, upon approval of the county administrator and county chair, until noon on Friday, that they would have time to potentially bring an issue before us. And then presumably after noon on Friday, that would kind of be the cutoff, and they'd have to come back before you at a later date.
So, excuse me, Mike, are you going to publish an agenda before noon on Friday and then they can amend that?
No, that was not the intent. The intent was to hang on to it up until then, and then basically afternoon, if there were things that people brought. So let's say somebody came in 11:59, and gave me this, that they would still met the deadline, but I now need some time to make all the changes, amendments, and then have it prepared, ready to send it out to everybody.
Only problem I see there is, just happened here last year, is that the department head thought he had sent electronically a memorandum for inclusion on the agenda and didn't realize until it got published that it wasn't on there. And that's going to happen here, because until that agenda is published, he's not going to realize that he missed, that it didn't get taken care of. And that's the thing that I would like to see, the rigidity of this policy. I'd like to see addressed, that you.
So we can put in some language that basically says that after that Wednesday time period, that we send out a draft to the department heads and commissioners, and then you'd have something to look at. So if that triggered something like that.
That's more specific. I don't want to place you in a bad situation, but I still wouldn't be opposed to giving you the full discretion, you and the chair, saying after Friday noontime, this is an event that we really need to recognize, as opposed to somebody just too lazy to get it in on time.
Well, and what about just internal controls, like, you know, beyond us, like, you know, if somebody sends a request, you know, Michael would at least acknowledge that. I'm sure he does anyway, but are there internal controls in place that would prevent that, or would you rather see that language?
Well, I mean, it could happen, obviously. I mean, and I think in that scenario, it's more, they thought they sent it, but didn't.
Yeah.
But, you know, we're only gonna respond to what we receive, obviously.
That's right.
We generally do. I mean, normally, we have them send them to both Patrice and I, so they double the chances to make sure that somebody's aware of what people want. Normally, Patrice, when she gets it, you know, we're all part of that same loop right now. So she'll acknowledge it as soon as she receives it, or very close thereafter. So they get something that says, thank you, I will get that on the agenda, or thank you, review, you know, to get it on the agenda. And if there's any issues, then obviously I follow up with the department head and ask them for additional information or questions.
And I say that it's more important that there is a written document out there with a full agenda, as opposed to an important item that didn't get put on because of the rigidity of our policy that the public would have liked to have known about. We didn't find out until 3 minutes past 8 in the morning at the meeting day. You walk in, you pick up the agenda, nothing there I want to look at. You walk out and find out at 3 minutes past 8, we're talking about contributing to an abortion clinic in Plantation A. You see what I'm saying? And so somewhere between having this rigid policy and the flexibility to make sure that we're being inclusive and informing the public, I'd like to see something.
So what had previously been mentioned to me by at least one commissioner I remember having a conversation with, and I thought it was you, Bill, but it might not have been. I think it was mentioned that once that gets out the door and is posted, then you didn't want any more changes. Is that
Well, that
Commissioners.
certainly wasn't me,
Okay.
because
so
the
it's-
absurdity of this thing was Rebecca wanted to accommodate everybody, what not to do up to 3 or 4 amendments, and that's just absurd. But that was Rebecca wanting to be, and that changed just like that when she got done. That was a shock to everybody's system, because the first case was Dennis thought he electronically sent an agenda item in that didn't get put on and didn't know, and nobody wanted to add it. And they had plenty of time. The agenda got posted early Friday, but nobody wanted to, wait.
Well, my point is that I think the administrator has the ability to do that under this wording to say, hey, here's what the draft is this, work with his folks.
So I mean, I can remove that portion about the Friday noon deadline if I understand that basically once the agenda is posted, that's not set in gold, that you'll allow changes right up until whenever. And I don't know if you want to set a deadline for that or not, to basically say, by Monday morning, this is pretty much set, and if we're gonna make changes, we'd like to make those at the meeting.
And I
If
think
not-
that's absolutely true. I think by the end of the business day on Friday, if you haven't gotten it in, it's gonna be goddamn important. We're gonna add it Monday morning, because,
It's just not good public
no,
policy.
well, it isn't, and when you look at it, you say, how long have you known about this? Oh, a couple of weeks. Well, where you been? You know what I mean? Those are the kind, but I don't want to put you in that position where you have to tell somebody that you had 2 weeks, or you had 5 days, you didn't tell me in time, I'm not gonna put it on, as opposed to, this is critical, we need to get it on. It saves us too from having to do all these motions Tuesday morning to add stuff to the agenda that you knew about last Friday.
No, I agree.
Well-
The only trade-off concern I have is obviously when preparing the agenda, if somebody, not that this would be an issue because I'd stay and do it anyway, but, so let's say somebody comes in at 3:50, 10 minutes before the doors lock up and goes, Mike, I forget all about this.
Oh, what day?
On Friday, so, I'd probably stay and get it on the agenda and send it out anyway, but if I get a bunch of those, or I'm already committed to do something Friday afternoon,
You should be working all
it
week.
makes it, well, and that's not, I do what I gotta do, but the concern is, again, that we're not, there just has to be a level of sensitivity there where either there's discretion among the chair or myself at some point to say to a department head or
Are
an
you
individual
comfortable
that's supposed to-
exercising that discretion, Mike?
Oh, I have no problem. no.
Good, and then I say between the chair and Michael, you guys soften up a little bit, don't make this so rigid, but go ahead and exercise the discretion you need to make it a workable product.
So certainly the commission wouldn't have problems if we got something in and they knew about it for a month and they didn't bother to collect the information they needed until way after. As a whole, you'd be okay with the chair and I saying, you know what? You miss out, that's,
Yeah, that can
you're
wait.
bad, you're
Yeah,
gonna have to
absolutely.
wait 2 more weeks.
Because I'd much rather see that than to see you say to them, too bad, so sad, you failed a strict deadline that we.
No, my whole point is, I think there's some discretion in this built in for the administrator.
Do you see it in the verbiage that we have here, that you have that discretion? Do you need to modify?
I mean, I'd rather remove the new Friday reference, to be honest with you, if knowing that there's gonna be a little more flexibility there, that if I don't get this posted by 5:01 on Friday afternoon, I haven't missed the commissioner's deadline or anything like that. Will I get it out Saturday morning? No, I mean, I still would try to get this out Friday afternoon, but the concern being is I don't want a whole bunch of stuff dropped in my lap at 4:00 on Friday and then have the commission expectation that I have to accommodate those, plus get it out by 5:00 on Friday, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, that's unreasonable.
So as long as there's a little bit of understood flexibility there, the goal is to get it out by the end of the day on Friday.
And I envision you having a conversation with Paul, saying, here it is, 3:30, Friday afternoon, I've got to be, anyways.
Yeah.
I've got 3 requests on my desk, and these people have known about this now for 3 or 4 days, and I don't want to deal with it. And the two of you saying you shouldn't have to. Bring it to the board Tuesday morning.
Okay.
As opposed to, this is critical, this is got to go,
Well, bring it to I assume that administrator's answer would be, you got two choices. One of them is wait or plead your case under the two scenarios.
But I also have no problem saying to them, especially if it's if something comes up, I get that. And I would say probably 98% of the time, that's probably what it is. Or maybe there was an honest mistake somebody made. They thought they sent it and they didn't. Okay, I get all that. I think that's probably reasonable. But if we start to see some habitual stuff, then I think at some point, we've got well within our rights to say, you know what, you can come Tuesday morning and request the committee, or you can make that request to the commissioners. But the chair and I feel like the rest of the commission shouldn't vote for that because of X, Y, and Z or whatever.
And that's what really caused all this, is that we had particular department heads who were negligent and careless about getting these things in. And that's what caused all of this problem. So,
But I do think it's getting, like, looking at this packet, we have memos on items. And I think that in conjunction with this, just your internal controls along with this, I think is gonna work well.
And I would suspect that's gonna improve as everybody, as I get used to reviewing them, as they get used to submitting things. We did have our first, since I've been here, obviously, staff department head meeting, and we had an opportunity to discuss that, and wherever we go next with this, I mean, I indicated to them I would bring that back to them to look at. So, in fact, to be honest with you, I mean, if we're looking at softening this up a little bit, to be able to have that opportunity, get a final chance to discuss it with staff and then come back to you would be nice, actually,
I think we will, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're not gonna have to rewrite this though.
Yeah, I'll have to make some changes. And some other stuff.
So, down at the bottom, you took out the
Bottom of what page?
first, page 2.
Yeah.
The not a requirement, but the hope that they submit some additional information material.
And that was just basically because I moved it from C up to A. Under
Oh, that's already
preparation.
there?
Yeah, so that language I moved up to A.
Oh, everything.
Under preparation.
And added it there,
Yeah.
Yeah. rather than the deadline.
And your gut feeling is that the rest of your staff and the departments are on board with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're willing to, obviously, they seem to be, they're willing to give it a chance. I mean, I think having the knowledge that there is flexibility will appeal to them as well. But obviously, I think they understand the expectation is for everybody's sake, the sooner we can get this information in, vet it, and get it ready, it's just gonna make everybody's job easier and I emphasize that numerous times. Really, the end goal here is to make everybody's job much easier on the day of the actual meeting, so there doesn't have to be a lot of
Yeah, we're all on the same page.
discussion and stuff back and forth. There's questions you ask them, obviously, but you hopefully have given you all the information you need or want. And if there's little follow-up things, yeah, I mean, that's to be expected, but at least there doesn't have to be a lot of back and forth to the extent that we now have to table something for 2 more weeks or something of that nature, So it really is meant to make everybody's life easier for the long run. The other big one you may want to look at is J, the vote required to, because I know
I was just reading that.
we had a lot of discussion there and that.
Each commission intends to vote on all issues and questions presented for vote except when a valid conflict of interest clearly exists. A member may abstain from voting on a motion provided member states on record personal conflict of interest exists. Absent that conflict, the record shall reflect he did not vote for the vote. It's exactly the way Robert's rules prescribes. You okay with that, guys?
Yeah, that's what Robert's rule says. I feel a little more strongly. I feel that, it's your duty to vote. But
What are you gonna do? Twist my hand?
well, that's,
I think we're really talking about how the record's gonna reflect what you
Yeah.
did. And the records record reflect that you did not vote unless you stated a conflict.
Yeah, that's the same. I don't need to hash over the same argument. That's the 2/3 agreed that that was the right way, so that's the way we'll move forward.
And also speaking of 2/3, I did change that under the executive session, the I one as well. It was set up on a 3/5, which is council language, obviously, so I assume. So,
Yeah.
Looks good to me.
You know, that's, actually, that 3/5 might come from state statute.
and it may be, so I mean, I know that's what the state statute says. I mean, there's an argument about that too.
Well, you gotta be careful with that because they're not even consistent.
Yeah.
We could have we can hold a meeting, two of us, it's not public. Yeah, it says it's 3 or more, statute says 3 or more, so, you know, so I mean, you gotta be careful. I think this clearly reflects, at least you're already voting.
Okay, so we ready to move on to the next item?
Well, do we want to move this as amended? Or do we want to wait for the finished
So
document?
what I would recommend is that I go back and make the final changes, get it in the final form. Would like an opportunity to send it to the department heads so they've seen it, so they feel like they've had an opportunity.
I agree.
Because maybe they come up with some things that I didn't think of that you might not have thought of as well. And if that's the case, bring it back at a future meeting for final approval. Now, realistically, and you know, we're doing a lot of this right now anyway, so it isn't, even though you haven't officially put your seal on it, we'll be moving this direction anyway, so. But yeah, I would, out of respect to finalize the process, let me make the final changes and then come back with something for you to actually approve. And that could be as early as the next meeting, it may not, but I mean, certainly within a month from now anyway, at the latest, so.
Agreement there, okay? Abatement application.
Well, Michael's done some research and, because my question, I guess the rest of you others may have had the same one, is that can we arbitrate a refusal to grant a homestead exemption? But the information that Michael got clearly says that that's part of the abatement process, so.
Which was a surprise.
I was quite sure that was a matter of law, and anyways. So I guess today we set a date, but at some point, Michael, we really need to get some help with understanding what constitutes eligibility for homestead exemption.
Yeah, and I do have some other information I can give you that spells that out, pretty much the criteria that it's not within what you have right now, but I definitely have additional materials that I could give to you as part of your, you know, review and determination here. Because there are certain criteria that aren't spelled out in the law that makes it a lot clearer as to what you would do. The issue on scheduling is that it says by law that we have to send them out the notice to the party, so they would be the applicant, to the municipality, whatever. We have to send those out with at least 3 weeks' notice before the hearing with certified mail. If you do, when the next meeting comes up, 3 weeks doesn't give a lot of time. So the other concern was that acting on 60 days from the actual application, making sure that there had been some action. She did put in her final submission of documentation that she'd be willing to extend that time period. So the question does become what's the most appropriate then time period. And we do have, I came across some language as a brief outline of what the commission has used in the past for these, but.
This tax appeal process, is this our process or is this?
So that tax, I think that's the one.
It says tax appeal process.
Yes, so that is what's included on the other side of the application form, which I assumed or understood to be what you used, or at some point, some commission had,
Tax appeal process.
some commission had approved that or at least what the standards have been
Now,
used.
the application for an appeal from the municipality,
No, the application to the actual commissioners that, so there's an appeal application form, and it should have been in your packet, that basically says, here's what you should provide. And it indicates to explain the reason and what the denial and all that is. Now, they also include a copy of the denial so that you have that, and then it's shown that you have that they've actually gone through the step below you to appeal that decision of the assessors.
And that they've.
And that they were denied, so that's what they're
Yeah.
appealing. So they're appealing the denial of the Board of Assessors.
I don't know how well he organized it, whatnot, but your predecessor was given a suggested format, how to outline our book, our appeal, the assessment appeal book. In other words, we get a packet from you, everything from the application right up through. And it's the order that it comes in and helps us understand the process, everything from did the appeal in time to so on and so forth. I don't know if you can find that or not.
I will take a look, because I haven't, the only thing I found was basically a couple references to questions in terms of when the time period started, in terms of the actual submission of the application. And then basically what you have in front of you, the actual application form and all that.
I may look to see if I've got a copy of that. I think it's important because sometimes these books are put together differently, especially if you go in and start moving them around. And as we're trying to conduct an appeal hearing, and they reference a piece of material, we're all looking in different places for it. You know, and so. And the reason I'm wondering about this is it says, in one place, it says, the commissioners during this meeting, in other words, the first meeting, generally would schedule a hearing for the next meeting. What generally means that it's not, they don't have to. Then you go down here, a few paragraphs and whatnot, it says that it has to be scheduled within 60 days from the date of the application. So I'm just curious as to, probably doesn't need to change anything, but we do have statutorily, we have 60 days from the date of the application to schedule a hearing, correct, Michael?
That was my understanding.
Okay. So the application is dated when to us, Michael? We don't have that.
So the original letter was January 9th when she sent it out. We didn't get this actually received in the office here until right around the time of the last meeting in January, or second meeting in January for the commissioners. So it was right around.
I see the application.
But the application itself, I went back to her and said, well, this is the form that I found that the commission appealed to have used.
So I think that's, by statute, that's the date that starts the clock. February 3rd. So we couldn't even wait until April 4th, because that would be 61 days. And that's the other thing too, Michael, is some of these days are,
So the other part of that, you know, again, she sent what she believed was an appeal to the commissioners, so and her letter was dated January 9th. I know we received it here, well, it came in the mail, it wasn't stamped, so I can't tell you exactly. Around the last time, so it was probably somewhere within a week or so after that. So arguably, that would have been her submission of the appeal. Now, obviously, you haven't seen it because you didn't have a meeting scheduled where that could get added to the agenda to have the discussion, is the application complete, do we have standing, and all those things that you should be doing right now. But we also need to be cognizant of the fact that she did technically file it within 60 days after their denial, which was back in December, based on the application packet that you have in there.
well, it looks to me like we can go to April 4th for 60 days, Michael.
If you're making that determination that her official application to you, with all the information or with the information that you're requesting was that date, then yes.
Well, I'm just looking at just the application itself is dated 2/3 by her own date.
But what's not here is like, and I'm not sure that it's her,
The supporting information.
is the supporting information, you know.
Yeah, well, I think the fact somewhere here, she says, I'll agree to a continuance if necessary. I think, yeah, I consent to item 1B and give consent to a 60-day extension. At the bottom of her tax appeal process.
You think we could do it the second meeting?
Well, it just, I'm thinking how long Michael needs to get us supporting educational information on.
That and her application is not complete.
Well, and to the degree, there's only, I think, a couple more items in there, or am I missing something else?
Well, no, shoot, we don't have a denial.
Well, it should have been in there, yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, so you have an application for an abatement that she filled out with the town that was then signed, at least dated signed on 12/19 by the assessors.
So that's her.
And that came with, so what she originally, she wrote a letter to the commissioner dated January 9th. It wasn't necessarily using the application form we have, but I don't even know technically, I'm assuming. I found it after the fact, obviously, that that's the form. So I made her go back and fill out that form as well.
Okay.
Now, I mean, that's another thing is the completed, does the commission have a date? Do you determine to be a completed application when everything, or an application submitted, not completed, but until it's complete or not? And I'm assuming on that case, then you gotta go back and look at, well, then has she met her appeal deadline? But I certainly think that the applicant's intent was, and did try to meet the 60-day time period because she sent a letter out towards the middle of January.
Michael.
Okay, so this is, it says for applicant, signature of applicant. So this document that you pointed out to me, John, application for abatement, that's filled out by the town.
Yes, so well, she basically would have been informed that whether she got in the tax bill or not, I'm not 100% clear on that. But she would have been informed by the town one way or the other that she was not, that her homestead exemption was being revoked by the town. So it was being taken back. She was not going to get that for this tax year. She then had the right to go back to the board and say, I appeal this decision. And this would have been the application form that traditionally most municipalities under law kind of use. I mean, it's provided by the state as well, or at least it's a basic format. So she would have filed this application of abatement of property taxes with the board of assessors, I'm assuming, or the assessors in this case, which according to the website, they just list them as the assessors of 3 selectmen. So I'm assuming that's the case. This letter that you see there, she would have filled it out, or somebody did for the applicant, which could have been anybody there in the office, I guess. I don't know. But the commissioners, I mean, basically, but the assessors of the board, the 3 individuals, Phil, Wesley, it looks like, and whoever that other person is. That's the decision they made on her appeal. She's now appealing to the commissioners that decision of the board of assessors, their decision not to grant her original appeal of the original decision. Get things more complicated.
So we're gonna have to hear that appeal. And the question is can second meeting in March, does that give you enough time to get us some background information on how to qualify for a homestead exemption?
I only need, basically a few days enough to get the information, assuming the applicant can get it to me, and if they can't, I mean, that's their driving that, not you. But I should definitively, as I understand it, I just need 3 weeks from the hearing to make sure those letters are sent out to them. all the parties that need to be notified.
Yeah,
And,
including the
and then
town.
enough, probably, let's say a week or so, maybe less, but I mean, about a week or so would give me enough time, if that's the priority, obviously, get everything together and ship those materials out to everybody. Because we'll send them to the municipality, we'll send them to her, all the information she's been submitted as well, and we're also required to send, as I understand it, to the municipality as well, so they can come to that hearing and argue before you, obviously, the rationale for their decision.
And they need to provide that to us so that it can be
Can
provided.
be shared with the
Yeah.
other individual as well.
Yeah. So you're looking at, the reason we're talking about all this is to figure out what date to do this, right?
And I'm looking at March 21st.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Assuming that date works for everybody.
My problem is the 7th, but trying to alleviate that. That's 7th, that's our meeting, unless everybody would agree to the 4th, but we don't know that, right?
Right, so say that of March, or what do you,
Of
yeah, you said,
April,
oh, of April, okay, all right.
Well,
that's too far.
Yeah, I mean, and
Well,
that's
yeah, that'll be
probably,
a busy day and everything.
Yeah.
yeah,
Just do March.
Yeah,
because we were going to set March, second week in March for our APA thing too. We'll have to see. Well, I think it should be March 21st. I'm going to move to set March 21, 2023 for a tax abatement hearing for Diane St. Hilaire.
Seconded.
moved in second, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed.
You think it should be a different day? Paul?
No, I'm just, no, it sounds like, no, if everybody can be ready, I don't think it should be.
I thought you said you're opposed.
No, I voted. I
Oh,
voted.
you say that when we have a unanimous decision, you ask if everybody's opposed. And
Yeah.
I think that's what you're doing.
Yes.
Oh. Well.
Yeah.
Okay. That was in, yeah, okay.
The reason I do that is because sometimes I don't hear John, I want to make sure.
Sure, speak up.
Sorry. Okay, so, next item is the Town of Sedgwick's letter of support for Community Resilience Partnership Grant.
Michael, you've had some research on this. There's nothing, all we're doing is supporting their grant request. Is that correct?
essentially, yes. And
Then we're not committing any funds. We're not committing
from
any.
what I understand, no.
So
You're just saying that we support their efforts, and I basically tried to craft something that would say that.
You know, this has to do with climate control. It's a climate control
It's
issue.
part of that overall, the Maine Won't Wait plan as part of the Maine Climate Council's strategic plan to address those issues throughout the state. And basically, they developed that plan, and there's criteria within it. This grant they are applying for basically meets one of the criteria, which deals with improvements to older buildings and other stuff to make it more energy efficient stuff.
Goes to their municipal buildings, right?
Yeah, the improvements to their municipal building. I mean, the only, well, I'm saying only drawback, but they, obviously, the argument when you look at these is, well, then do we have to start doing a bunch of these for everybody else? But obviously, the
Well, they've
argument,
got
the
to
argument
apply.
is trying to meet is that if they make improvements to their building, that just increases the better chance, reduces pollution and increases energy efficiency, which overall helps the whole entire county, not just them.
So I want to move to approve a letter of support to Sedgwick's Community Resilience Partnership Grant application.
Seconded.
Moved in second,
So just a quick question. With that being said, the way that I wrote it and signing on the commissioner's behalf, is that okay? Or, I mean, I can certainly have it so you saw all of you sign it, but, okay.
my assumption is if some other municipality apply for this grant, that a similar letter would be used.
Yep.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
What did you say, John?
Yeah. Okay.
When's our next meeting?
It was 22nd because we have a holiday on that Monday, so it's actually Wednesday instead of Tuesday.
Okay.
I believe that's the case.
20.
Yes.
Now, having the abatement hearing on the 2nd in March, is that too early to talk about an opera budget conversation?
I mean, I don't think so. The big key with that right now, I think, is John's presentation to you, how much he can.
And I still say that's not my intent to be that specific as far as what goes in a category. I'd like to talk about general categories, plugging a number in for that category, knowing it's, it's done with a pencil and a long eraser. And
Well,
So, yeah, I mean, the issue basically is just that 4.9 or million is a lot of money. So you might be able to fund more categories if you know it's not really gonna be 4.9, it's maybe only 2 billion, not 2 billion. 2 million going towards broadband, and now we've gotta find other categories to spend or that will fit these other things. So I mean, I guess it really comes back to what your thoughts.
well, see, my reasoning for waiting is exactly that. Is because I don't know what, John's sort of coming to us with a surprise, not a surprise, but, an idea that we don't know the number of yet. And until we know that number, if he came back and it was 4.9, then that's a different discussion than if he comes back and says that idea is too.
shame on John for coming back to us with a number less than 4.9.
Well, and that's the reality.
Because remember, gentlemen, we're employing this man. And the more money we spend from ARPA, the longer he's going to be employed, this company is going to receive the revenue, which has already amounted to tens of thousands of dollars, right?
So I would say based on initial conversations with John, that's what he's gonna come back and argue to you is, let's do this, and I still think we should. Whereas, I mean, he did correspond with Kitty when we were trying to put together some of this stuff back, I think a month or so ago, where it was more like 2 or 3 million, right? I think that's what he had said.
Wasn't part of those.
All right, well, he had said at some point, and I got a copy of that email, I can forward out too, but he was like in that, well, maybe it's more 2 or 3, but that was before he gave this concept any thought. Plus, some of this concept, again, depends on what the state does with those grants as well. So,
Yeah,
which we have no control over, obviously, or very little.
And I'm sure John is somewhat, I don't know what the word is, it's not impressed, but in other words, understands today what he didn't understand it when he first started, and that's how long it's taking us to spend the money and how they're finding other funds to cover what would have come from us had they not been there. I mean, the fact that we've spent so little money in almost 2 years on this project, whatnot, especially when we thought we started out, we said 5 million, it's not gonna last long.
well, and I think we're not the only folks that are in that position. I think everybody is in that position. Because there's so much money out there, and folks like us are trying to make it go further and do,
But as we talk about categories, and we'll say that John becomes passionate about housing for the homeless, we may want to consider reducing that 5 million from the broadband to 4 million and adding another million to our,
that's the point.
you know what I mean? So it has nothing, I won't say nothing, but it has less to do what John wants to tell us to do with it as opposed to what overall do we want to spread this money out over? And that's a discussion I'd like to have at some point in discussing an overall projected. Problem with calling it a budget is once we have a budget in place, it's a budget. But I'd like to find a different name for it because it's not really a budget, but it's more like a tentative plan for tentative plan for what?
Yeah, portion.
Yeah, I would have a portion of these funds out. And knowing that at any time we can shuffle money around to other. So I'm back to the question again, Michael, can we effectively have this discussion
I mean, based on the parameters of what you're talking about, yeah, I think so. I mean,
So this, and if needs be, just table it, move on to another meeting and try to finish it up, but, okay? All right, so let's plan on
and
it.
I think we can also refer to it going forward as a plan if you want to. I think just originally it was kind of, I think we interpreted you wanted to charge us with quote coming up with a budget, which is what we did, but it's not in the sense of what you're saying with a budget. So I mean, we can call it a plan, whatever you want to call it going forward. And that way it makes it clear. Same thing with the allocated. We can come up with stuff to make it clear that this is approved in a project versus something that's been looked at, but it's just sitting there, so.
Okay, so we're ready to. Okay, the other thing I wanted to bring up is exactly what was brought up about advertising position. I'm new to the seat, fairly new to the commission. To me, a budgeted position that becomes vacant, unless we have, you know, a hiring freeze or whatever, and there's some, you know, a little bit of urgency. I think that administrator, maybe in consultation with the chair, would have the ability to allow that to be advertised. I mean, I've gone.
The problem is that this was a pretty straightforward request today. I mean, there's no reason for you and the chair to, Michael, not to approve his request to get out there as soon as possible. But I can tell you that there are other situations where we had better be able to have a conversation before they go out. And a good example is the sheriff said, I want to go out to bid for a school resource officer when at the same time he has 2 vacancies within the regular patrol force. See what I'm saying? And we just said, wait a minute, time out. We think you should be prioritizing your patrol to your basic functions and fill those first before you start taking on these extra. So there's a time when we should have a discussion on what he's going to be allowed to advertise for. So you see what I'm saying? So if you might feel that this is straightforward, there can't be any issue here, go ahead. Go ahead, but remember that, especially when you're dealing with the sheriff and the multitude of classifications he has within his office, that you might want to wait and make sure that it's been fully vetted before he goes out.
So what I was gonna say is, yeah, I mean, if you look at the current personnel policy and what's in there, it does indicate that as soon as there's a vacancy, you know, there's a couple different things that the department head has to do. And one of those things is to look at and also come up for justification that the position needs to be filled or even needs to be required. I think in this particular case, it was obvious to us that he needs somebody to fill that role. So it wasn't like it wasn't going to get advertised. It was more probably a formality today that commissioners would say that, I mean, it wasn't realistic. There was going to be any proposal to say, well, we can just have somebody else do this. I mean, there needs to be a designated person sitting in that office to address the variety of things. But in other cases, yeah, I mean, there could be things that are open for discussion. And I think that's the thought process at that final level and that budgetary authority and oversight that you have is where you want to be able to say, no, we don't think this needs to be advertised or shouldn't be advertised right now or whatever the case may be. I mean, I also get the flexibility parts. I mean, it's a fine line. If I have a normal position that's been filled for hundreds of years, and it's obvious that it's going to be advertised. Yeah, it's difficult for the department heads to sit there and say, well, this is, you know, jamming me up now because I have to wait 2 or 3 weeks until I get the commissioner to even advertise the position. And meanwhile, you know, I need to get it filled because I'm not going to have anybody else to rely on, which is a little less if you have a larger department that has 20 or 30 employees. But if you have one that only has 2 or 3 or whatever, then obviously the need to get that advertised sooner is more important to them. So,
See, I'm not opposed to the flexibility of you and the chair deciding that this department could go ahead if it's urgent. If you can both say to yourself, I'm assured this is clear, concise, there's no complication, but if there's an opportunity that this could not be exactly what it looks like, you better bring it up for discussion because
Well, it's just, I mean, to me, it was straightforward.
this one is, absolutely.
Okay.
But when you get the same request from the sheriff and whatnot, especially when you start talking about some of these fuzzy positions, you know, you really, I'm just saying that there may be issues there that you're not familiar with, that need to be vetted, and you need to understand before we give consent, so.
So is it fair to say that, I mean, because we have to do other adjustments to the policy anyway, should we probably take a look at that in the personnel policy too, and maybe?
I can tell you that we have never required somebody to justify filling that position. It's never happened. And that policy's been in effect for 30 years. So, I mean, you might as well throw that out. It's never done. I mean, today we took judicial notice that he needs office administrator. You know what I mean? So, I mean, there was no discussion, there was no need for him to justify that.
Well, no, but I think both Michael and I were a little bit uneasy because we saw his dilemma, felt his dilemma, made a decision that, you know, and I think it worked out all right, but I'm just afraid, you know, next time is.
Well, that's the other thing too, is that be careful what you do with Bob being a new department head. You know what I mean? Make sure he understands that we do, that we're not loosey-goosey about the policy, that we really want to adhere to them. But at the same time, that there can be accommodations made and so on. I just think, don't get Bob started off on the wrong foot here.
No, we're very cognizant of that. But I just, what would have been, you know, like, what, was it handled properly, I guess is the question.
And I have no problem with it. You know,
Or would you have rather seen, like, I thought, geez, maybe we should be sending out something, but then it looks like a meeting. Which I wasn't comfortable with.
well, if you'd said something else, I would say that Michael and I have approved the DA going up ahead of time to account for what appears to be a very straightforward replacement. You know, I would have said, yeah, shoot my finger at Bob for doing up to getting applications before we get approval.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I take responsibility, but I probably should have notified all.
We haven't got to say, yes, we approve, and consequently, we're just being, you know, updated. So I, you know, if that makes you feel better. I don't want to take away the discretion for you guys to do exactly what you did. John doesn't either, I can see by the shaking his head. So if maybe we can fix it by simply saying that we have done this. Because then if you send it to me and I said, I go back to Michael and said, Michael, there's some issues here that you're unaware of. Stop the process right now. We need to bring this for us. It's not too late to do that. You approve this thing Tuesday morning, and by Tuesday afternoon, we get that memo, and I find a problem, you can go right back to the battle and say, stop. We're gonna bring this to the board. So,
Okay. I don't have a problem with that, to be honest. We probably, you know, I should have done that anyway.
Well, I thought of that, but then I thought, is that a meeting? And
Yeah,
all
no,
those worries.
And I think you have to be careful, obviously, but notifying, but not having a discussion. I mean, we couldn't get into a back and forth with all of
Yeah.
you about it. It would basically just have to be, this, Paul and I
I
decided
don't think it's
this.
anything
and
more than
FYI.
updating us
Yes,
and giving us
FYI.
preliminary information about upcoming meeting. That's
Yeah.
all you're really doing. You're telling us at the upcoming meeting, you're going to be formally asked to.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, I could almost include that stuff in with the agenda memos going forward too. So that way you got it.
I'm still concerned that it might be too late for the department head to back up the process, but
Well, yeah, I mean, it does get back to timing, I guess, yeah.
when you're dealing with needs, even a lot of employees, I think that's the time to come to us. I mean, that's when you're dealing with small department, it is straightforward, I think. I don't know.
Okay, anything else anybody needs to bring up on our,
I'm going to move that we adjourn.
Seconded.
all in favor? Aye.
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 Unanimous.
So I'm going to try to send this